All right, good morning, everybody. Let's get started. We have another great day of panels for you. Yesterday, well, I guess I should start by saying my name is Zoe Barber, although Alan just introduced me, and it's really nice to be here. And really nice to have such a great group of members engaging with us. So yesterday, you all heard a lot about TEFCA. You heard from ONC and from the RCE about our plans for Go Live and what we've been doing with onboarding, some of the details in the new Common Agreement version 1.1 that we are going to be using for Go Live and that our candidate QHINs will be signing once they're designated. And you also heard a little bit about our plans for updating the Common Agreement to version 2. And then also Alan Swenson had a panel where he had 3 of our candidate QHINs talk about their plans. And now I have 4 more candidate QHINs with me today to continue the discussion. So first, I want to, for those who don't live and breathe TEFCA and our terminology the same way that we all do, I just want to clarify when we talk about candidate QHINs exactly what that means. The application process that we've created has multiple phases to it. It's a pretty lengthy and rigorous application and onboarding process. So our term candidate QHINs applies to those who have gotten to the stage in the process where we have the RCE has reviewed their application and accepted their application and sort of determined that they are eligible as an organization to move forward in the process. So they have met certain eligibility criteria and prerequisites in order to move forward, including prior experience with certain technology capabilities, certain security capabilities, financial resources, et cetera. And then once they move into the candidate QHIN phase, then they actually will start to build out the functionality and the capabilities and instill the governance body, all of which are required before they can actually be designated as QHINs. So these 4 here have been working with us for almost 12 months. A year has gone by pretty fast, and so they're going to tell you all about that process today. So why don't we first start off by having each of you give quick intro and maybe just talk a little bit about some of the big opportunities you see with TEFCA. You want to go first?
Okay. So the opportunities and who we are. Okay. So I'm John Blair with MedAllies. MedAllies has been around for over 20 years, and it was about interoperability from the start. And our definition of interoperability is really usability and all these systems that work apart working as one. When it comes to transitions, and we were very focused on coordination of care and transitions of care and that kind of thing. So anyway, we've been doing this for a long time. We've been through the HIE, regional HIE phase, direct secure messaging for the last 10 years, care quality and the query side for a few years now, and we're on our way, knock on wood, to become a QHIN. And the opportunity here I see is a fewfold. One, expanding the connectivity that has not occurred for a portion of the country. 2, I think there's becoming a more and more sharp focus on data usability, data quality. And then lastly, I think we can continue the journey on getting the workflow on these different systems to be coordinated as if they're one. So rounding out the different pieces of interoperability by adding what's coming.
Great. Laura, you want to go next?
Well, good morning. My name is Laura McCrary. I'm the president and CEO of the CONSA National Network, and I appreciate the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you all this morning. If you're not familiar with CONSA, I'll give you just a thumbnail sketch. We are a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. We have our origins as a health information exchange, part of what many of you might have considered the state health information exchanges that were established during the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. We started in Kansas, and expanded across the nation over the last 13 years that we've been doing business. So now we are a national health information exchange, pretty much doing business in all states. We still keep to our roots very much, though. We are a provider-led and provider-governed organization. We have a platform that is EHR agnostic, meaning any EHR can come and participate with us, like most HIEs do. We also maintain a clinical data repository that allows us to be able to do some things that are a little bit different than some of the other QHINs. Partly we do that because we want to create one longitudinal record across all of the places that patients have gotten care at and be able to provide that one record to our customers. We also do it because we have a key focus on quality. We're a big proponent of NCQA and being able to actually create quality measures and focus on having the highest quality and complete data that's available. And so we are one of the key participants with NCQA on their DAV project. The other thing that's really important for us, and for many, many years, since 2012, we've provided access to patients to all of the medical information that we have in the Health Information Exchange. I know we were the first health information exchange that participated in the Harvard Open Notes project. We've always given access to patients to all of the medical information that we have in the HIE, and we're very excited about the individual access services that are a part of the QHIN. These are all things that we hold as core components as an HIE and from where we really came from. We're excited to have the opportunity to participate with our other candidate QHINs because we know it will help to expand across the nation the kinds of opportunities that have been really critical to us as a mission-driven organization, which is patient safety, reducing administrative burden for providers, and really providing the very best quality of care that we can in the nation. So I'm so appreciative of the Sequoia Project, Mary Ann and Zoe for the work that they've done in helping us get there. And I will say it's been a long journey. This last year has been long and hard. So for those of you contemplating this path, you can ask those of us who are up here that it's not too easy. And so anyway, I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, it's great to be with you today. Travis White, I serve as the Senior Vice President for Market Strategy and Adoption at No2, fellow candidate QHIN with the rest of these folks. So No2, for those that don't know, 13 years or so ago, we set out to bring interoperability and communication means and method to the edge of healthcare that was relatively underserved. And that passion still drives our organization today. We serve a lot of the post-acute spaces, therapy, behavioral, ambulatory settings, and provide that level of extensibility for national frameworks like Care Equality, as well as any other interoperable means of communication that their environment would rely and depend on. And so for us, we're excited about TEFCA. We're equally respective of the task that it has been. But I do want to at least acknowledge that it's been a rewarding experience. It's been a really rewarding experience working with the ONC and the RCE. The future of TEFCA and QHIN in general, I think what excites us about its opportunity that it presents both not only the constituents that we have served in our history, but also all of healthcare, is really just the expanded use cases. I think getting that full means of interoperability and communication to the edge of healthcare, leveling up that edge, and then also bringing about expanded use cases within the framework so that scale is realized. So it's good to be with you today.
Good morning, Matt Doyle. My background's computer science, so I'm a professional nerd like most of you. I work at Epic on our Care Everywhere team, which is our platform for interoperability. Like many of these other folks, we've been working on interoperability for a long time. And our drive has always been about helping providers get the right information that they need at the right time so that they can take care of their patients. And I think us and probably many of you have experiences where you realize information really does help save lives. Information gives better outcome for patients. It helps them to be better educated. It helps providers and care teams get them the treatment that they need. So for me, that's always been what's driven my interest in interoperability. I think, Zoe, the question you asked was a little bit around what's the opportunity around TEFCA. And there's a lot of them, but one of the things that sticks out to me is TEFCA has really been strategic in saying what works in the industry now, what are the proven tools that are out there today that we know work. Let's roll those together and let's do them at bigger scale. And bigger scale includes getting vendors like all of us together to do it. It includes working with our federal partners like the ONC. Many of you have heard the statistic today, 70% of hospitals interoperate and carry quality. Wonderful, thumbs up, I think that's great. But that means that we've got all these folks out there still on the sidelines. We need to get to them. And I think that TEFCA has the opportunity to be the vehicle by which we go and do that. That probably starts with learning who those 30% are that are still on the sidelines. I haven't seen real reports that study it, but I have some hypotheses. I think that it's rural organizations. I think it's under-resourced organizations. I think it's probably FQHC urban organizations. Folks who don't have the technology or who don't know how to get connected. And so the question becomes, how can we as a community of leaders who have been doing interoperability for a while not just say we're going to formalize what we've all done, we're going to create this great national framework, TEFCA, but let's also invite those other folks in. Maybe that starts with some more education. Maybe we work with Sequoia and ONC to say, how do we get public-facing education to providers, to payers, to public health authorities, to individual patients, to help them see the value that TEFCA is going to bring and help them see what their on-ramp can look like.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you so much. Great perspectives. And you know, excuse me, I'm having something stuck in my throat. Yes, as you all mentioned, right, we've been going through this process for 12 months. It's been, you know, long, arduous process. And I'm curious to hear how has your perspective evolved, if at all, since you submitted your application and now we're here almost 12 months later. And what have you learned? And I guess this time, let's start with Matt.
We're going in reverse order this time. Okay. Yeah, it's been a really great experience. I think everyone comes to this with their own experiences, their own what's worked in the past, how they've helped their community, and each one of us could probably tell a ton of stories about what that's looked like. And so one of the big things that's changed in my perspective over the last year working together is benefiting from hearing others talk about what's worked with their communities, what their experiences have been. And I'm really keenly interested in figuring out how do we create processes that really leverage what's worked in the past and make that repeatable, and where the pitfalls have been. And let's build processes that make sure we don't repeat any of those pitfalls that have happened in the past. So I've been really excited by the collaborative nature of the meetings. You guys don't all get to see them, but we meet together all the time as candidate QHINs. We're constantly talking through logistics, we're talking through practical questions that need to be solved, we're talking about how to make sure everyone is testing together to get ready. And the collaborative and learning atmosphere of that has been really positive.
Yeah, Brad?
Yeah, absolutely, Zoe. So I think probably two parts that jump out in my mind with that is, one, I think there's a part of it that hasn't evolved in that when we first evaluated the effort, we knew that it was going to be a lift in general for the organization to fully commit to. And in that way, that has not evolved. We were right, it was, and we are absolutely doing that. But what has been really refreshing is through that, we've been able to reflect back on decisions that were previously made and made prior to TEFCA that are serving our constituents incredibly well to set the stage for that transition and for that adoption. So that's incredibly exciting. And then I would echo what Matt's saying is that where I do think my perception and my view of it has evolved, at least relative to how it's unfolded over the last 12 months, is that collaboration. I think that in many cases it's a natural bias for me to think, you know, that this is going to be a bit slow and that it's going to be this federal program that drags on. And if we really want to see energy, we got to bring a lot of innovation to the conversations and drive it forward. What's been really rewarding and just incredibly complementary to the effort overall has been that collaboration, both between the candidate QHINs, but also the ONC and the RCE. I have to absolutely commend how quick and agile the process has been, collaborative and also receptive of feedback to then make a decision and say, okay, let's evaluate that. Let's have a conversation around it, and then, that's why we see all of the, the draft SOPs and the various things that are underway. So really just excited about how it's taken shape, but also gives me an optimism for what's ahead, because it's not just this process that I think that needs to exist. I think it needs to continue forward. I think we have to carry that exact same mindset into the post-go-live moment as well. Laura?
Thank you. I think one of the things that I found is that HIEs and national HINs, the folks that are sitting up here with me, have very different perspectives on how interoperability works. We've all grown up differently, and I applaud the Sequoia and the ONC for actually being able to accommodate both of those perspectives, because you have to really be able to hold two very different ideas in your hand at the same time and see how those can come together, and really be able to understand that where HIEs began and where we are now is not the same place where the large federated HINs have actually lived and worked. And so I think that one of my kind of takeaways from this process, first of all, I already told you, it's much harder than I anticipated it was going to be. But the other takeaway really is to understand that the differences that we have are okay, that there's opportunities for collaboration and cooperation. And as long as we actually are respectful of each other and the different perspectives that we come from, and we understand that there are standards that we're all going to need to follow, but we're all not going to approach this exactly the same way. And HIEs are not going to approach it the same way that federated HINs do. And so I think that's a really important thing for all of us to keep in mind as we move down this interoperability journey, that we do and are bringing two different sets of cultures together, but we're doing it in a way, I think, with the leadership from the ONC and from Sequoia that actually is going to make it work for our country. And that's terribly meaningful for us to not have separation or divisiveness here. And so I'm very, very supportive of what's happened, and I do think there's been respect from both sides of the table that you can do things differently and you can still actually be positive in what it is that results.
Yeah, great. I think those are all great comments. As I think about this, I probably could think of 10 things easily to focus on. I'll pick a couple. First of all, the leadership that we have here between Mickey Tripathi, Marianne, Alan, that's part of why I decided to go for this. I know all three and have worked with them, and this is a major undertaking, and there are others that could have been in those positions that I would not have been as encouraged to dive in. So I think that's one thing, and I think they've proven it. And I think that, if anything, the degree of skepticism of this potentially not working has markedly diminished as I've watched this year. Nothing's perfect, but it's been very effective, and I'm pretty bullish on it. So I'd say that's one thing. Another thing that I've realized is it's not just the collaboration and the working of the nerds on the technical side of it and figuring that out, which is pretty impressive. But it's also the policy, the SOPs, et cetera, around these different purposes of use and use cases. That is extremely important. And when you're looking at politics, policy, market, and all those different factors that play into that, that's a whole nother effort that can speed up or slow these other purposes down significantly. So that I might have underestimated a year ago and have grown with appreciation for that. The other thing that I'll mention, so I'll just do three. The other thing I'll mention is the new purposes of use. And I keep hearing, we've done treatment, treatment's working, we need to move on. And I agree. And there was some conversation about which purpose of use, we think is most important. And I have a hard time with that. I mean, individual access, public health, payment operations are all tremendously important. And I think it depends on the lens you're looking at. If you're looking at the revenue to drive this, to underwrite it, treatment and operations. If you're looking at consumers getting their access to their information and using it, et cetera, individual access. Public health is screaming for this. So I can't pick one, but I will say this. Let's not say we've got treatment fixed and put it in the rearview mirror. You talk about connectivity in 70% of the hospitals, and I don't know what percent of the ambulatory, and then goodness knows beyond that what kind of connection you have. Yeah, I think we've done a lot, and the market's done a great job with some policy interventions on connectivity. But in terms of treatment, we are way, way, way far away from finishing that one. When you look at a user and look at a provider or their staff and what they can do with this, sure, you've got information flowing, the transaction volumes are off the chart, but when you get into the quality, and then even more difficult, when you get into the usability and the human factor side of software development, ideally, this is one system that as you move through settings in different places, it acts and has been developed as one. Well, so you're going to get competing different companies to do their software development, so these things are synergistic. Big barrier. And so let's not forget that. There's a heck of a lot of work still to do on that as we add the other purposes of use. So there's three.
And John, I think building on that, the Sequoia's data usability work group has laid a really strong groundwork for how to tackle that challenge. And I think Dee Dee and Bill are going to be talking about that this morning, so I promise they didn't pay me to say this. But for anyone who hasn't looked at it and hasn't really reviewed their work, they've done a lot to figure out, yeah, there might be 5 ways to share a lab result, but there is a best way to do it. And let's all standardize and let's get consistent and make sure when we share data, it's shared in a consistent fashion that no matter who's on the receiving side, they can use it, they can put it to work. That could be for patient access, that could be for treatment, that could be for anything, but let's make sure the data is consistent. And I firmly believe we will never be better than the quality of data that we're sitting on top of. So it's really hard to overstate the value of the data usability work group and what they've been creating. And I think, John, you're dead on. We've got to tackle this problem to make sure that we really do the final mile of getting the value out of everything we've connected.
And usability.
And usability, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you all brought up collaboration, and the data usability work group is certainly an excellent example of how Sequoia helps to facilitate that collaboration across the industry. And in many ways, the candidate QHINs and ultimately the designated QHINs, are at the end of the day competitors. A lot of times, we hear, focus on the things that differentiate the QHINs. But as we see, the collaboration is going to be critical to the success of the QHINs, and TEFCA can only be successful if the QHINs are successful. So I want to ask you all to maybe throw out some examples or expand on some examples of how you've been collaborating so far, both together as candidate QHINs and also with the RCE and ONC, and how you envision collaborating more in the future. And I'll just throw that out to anybody who wants to start.
I'll grab it. Okay. Unless somebody else want to go first?
Go right ahead.
Yeah. Well, having been down this road with direct secure messaging, when that was thrown out on the country, we were one of the early ones on that. And so I can compare and contrast that. And it was very bumpy with direct at first. And MedAllies did a lot to try to get the different HISPs and systems to work together. We actually invested in and did that outside of what was going on a regulatory side. And it was tough. I mean, it took 5 years. We now have probably 90% of the market in our interop lab and testing things when they come up. We realized that had to happen. It's different this time around. There is, the task force and everything, we're working together all the time on that. But I see a much better, I don't know why, but there's much better understanding of the criticality of that, maybe because this is such a massive undertaking. But I think that there's the technical collaboration. Certainly we're doing testing through, and getting ready to hopefully be designated. So the collaboration is very natural, and there's just no friction there. So that's happening de novo, and I can really see the difference. And I think this is all risky stuff. But I think we all know that if we don't seriously collaborate on this, then we're going to increase our risk and lose, potentially the opportunity for this. And I think that it can't be understated that once we're off the ground and this is working, which I firmly believe it will, that a level of collaboration has to continue. I'm not talking about innovation and different things like that in business models, but I'm talking about just day-to-day professional services, particularly around support. You're as good as your worst. It's a network of networks, and you're as good as your worst network out there. So, there's going to be message failures. There's going to be problems that happen with different networks that happen at the edge, and if you don't have those support departments working essentially as one virtual department across all the networks, you're going to undermine support and professional services. So the collaboration is not just happening now, and it's really a pretty full-throated collaboration, but it's got to continue, and I hope and think it will.
And I'll just add before, and then I'll let others weigh in. The RCE and ONC, we are just throwing so much at these organizations all the time. So in addition to all of the onboarding activities that they've been doing, we also ask them to review and provide us feedback on Common Agreement version 1.1. and on Common Agreement version 2, where, like we said, we've been having these weekly intensive meetings, and everybody's mad at me because last Friday I sent out about 20 documents and asked for feedback by Thanksgiving Day. So, realistically, practically speaking, I think these organizations can't do it by themselves and need to rely on, the thoughtfulness and some of the resources of the other organizations that will also be, the feedback that will also be mutually beneficial to the other QHINs.
I just want to warn everybody. I just found out that she's going to get some staff to start to help her, so there's going to be more coming.
It's only going up.
Zoe, I just want to reiterate something that John said, and I learned this in the HIE world because the HIEs initially started out as being very competitive with each other. But what we soon learned the hard way was that the massive undertaking that is involved in trying to get done what we're trying to accomplish in this room takes every single one of us. And we can't actually be in a competitive stance because all of us are going to have to work together. And honestly, I look forward to the next 5 years, and I know we are going to make progress, but we're going to have another 5 years after that of all of us having to work together. And it could be another 5 years after that before we actually achieve the goal that we're all here trying to do. And so I completely agree with John. The HIEs, the HISPs have all moved to a place where they understand that the enormous undertaking and the complexity of what we're trying to do and the importance of us all working together supersede any sort of competitive behavior that I think that you would see amongst any of us.
Great.
Yeah, Laura, I would add, echo both you and John. I think that every organization that's involved in this process feels the weight. And I think that that's the burden of responsibility. I think we all look at it as a stewardship, that we're not just responsible for the technology only. And as a QHIN, I think we have to have that mindset, not just in getting to the quote-unquote finish line, which is more like the actual starting line. And I think that the reality of that is in order for us to carry it forward and actually bring value all the way to that clinician who's sitting inside of an episode of care or a point of care and actually needing good data at the right time, we've got to think all the way down to the human, not just the framework, not just the actual work of getting it to talk to one another, but the actual workflows, and actually carry it all the way downstream so that it is actionable. Yes, the data's flowing, and yes, we're exchanging content, but now I've actually empowered a person to then make a decision that could impact a life. And that burden of stewardship comes not only with this process and all of the wonderful documents you're sending over, but also the future vision, that it's not just about the go live date. It's about, okay, now we're live, now what are we going to do with it? How do we bring enough value to this framework, drive enough attraction to the realm of the possible that it actually pulls folks into that adoption phase where they really do see value downstream. And I think that that's what is driving many of the organizations, including No2.
Yeah, take the data from being movable to usable.
Yeah.
Like that. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'll start this next question with you, Matt. We talk a lot about the QHINs, and we feature the QHINs. But yesterday we had some discussions about the level of the flow downs and the compliance obligations that are incumbent on any participant that signs a framework agreement with the QHIN. And I'm sure that all of the QHINs, the RCE asks for a little bit of information on the onboarding processes and the kind of governance policies that the QHINs will have to oversee their participants. But largely, we leave that flexibility up to each QHIN to govern and enforce compliance in the way that they see fit that works for them. So starting with Matt, can each of you talk a little bit about your efforts to date in engaging participants? And how you sort of plan to ensure compliance within your network.
Yeah, and I actually see this as another dimension of collaboration. Just like we were talking about collaborating as candidate QHINs, it's also important that participants, the folks who are actually going to use TEFCA day in and day out, are part of the conversation, understand what the tools are intended to do, how they're going to use it, and how it's going to solve real problems. I'm fortunate that our community has been doing interoperability for many, many years, long before all the federal incentive programs. And they really started because they saw it was the right thing to do, that it would help doctors care for patients better. And so it's nice to come from that starting point, because the questions that I get and the engagement from our community isn't, should we do this? It's instead, how is this going to work? Help me understand how TEFCA is going to solve practical problems. And so it comes from a perspective of, yes, we want to participate, tell us how to do it, and tell us how and why it's going to help. So there's a couple practical things that we've been doing. One is we've for many, many years had a weekly policy call with all of our community across the whole country. And I would say over the last probably 18 months, TEFCA has just been a recurring theme. Like, probably every other week, TEFCA is something that we're talking about. And we're helping folks to understand, first, what it is. There's certainly questions out there. People don't know as much of those details. But then, not just what it is, but how we're going to make it easy. What will onboarding look like? How are we baking the tools for your providers directly into their day-to-day practice? I'm a firm believer that if any patient or doctor or other person needs to hear the word TEFCA, we probably failed. This needs to be baked so simply into their workflow that they don't even understand and need to know all the IT details of what's going on. It has to just be a native part of what they do. So we've been doing a lot of work on that, and then spending these weekly calls educating our community about how that's actually going to happen, how that's going to work. Educating their analysts and their IT staff about how we're going to make this easy, what the on-ramp is going to look like, how we're lowering the barrier of entry so that it will only be a couple quick decisions to make, and then they're onboarded. In addition to those group calls with our whole community, we've also had a number of one-on-one calls with our customers. And the way that usually goes is our customers BFF, and BFF means exactly what you think. That's an actual job title at Epic. So our customers, best friends forever, get on calls with them and talk to their executive team about what is interoperability, why is TEFCA going to help, what are you going to do to be a participant in this new framework. And so that education through both those avenues has done a lot to bring down the barriers of understanding and to build up excitement. So at this point, with TEFCA, I think coming live very soon, it's just on the horizon right now, we've got a lot of people who are already signed up, who are anxious, who are ready to go, and are going to hit the ground running on day one.
That's exciting. Travis?
Yeah, absolutely. So our approach has been pretty consistent with how we engage our partner base in general. And so those participants are already used to that kind of collaboration, but it is similar to what Matt was just talking about with respect to not only the community of partners and participants within the No2 ecosystem, but also deliberate one-on-one conversations to make sure that they feel empowered and educated about what does it actually mean, what is the flow down, how do I know what I'm getting myself into, and making them fully empowered to make the decision, not forcing anyone to make the decision, but actually taking the steps, walking through that conversation with them, has been an important part of No2's outreach efforts in this regard. And then because of how No2 has already shaped its integration with its partner base, they're excited because of the actual technical lift that it carries downstream for them relative to connecting to No2. Because we aggregate many things on the backside of our API, TEFCA is just one of those things. And so they are benefiting from that extensibility of the framework, and so their product effort, they're finding, is also minimized to actually make the decision to say, yeah, I understand all the operational nuances, I understand the governance nuances, I do want to do this, I want to exchange, I want to be a participant, and then they step through the actual product discovery. So that's kind of how No2's approaching it.
At Kanza, we have a whole tool belt of approaches because we have a lot of constituents that we work with that we have to really talk to and think about very differently. So obviously we have our own members. We have thousands of members across the nation. They include FQHCs, behavioral health organizations, large hospitals, small hospitals, critical access hospitals, ambulatory practices. And so all of those organizations need to be approached just a little bit differently. And for us, one of the things that's been beneficial is that we came from a state, Kansas, that is heavily regulated health information exchange. And so we've always been in a very heavily regulated environment. We have to get a certificate of authority to do business, health information exchange business in Kansas every 2 years. We have to present much of the same kind of information we had to present as a part of the QHIN. So most of our participants are very well familiar with what are the flow downs that we are now presenting to them. And for most of them, they've already got full connections with it. So it requires very little change for them. We don't have to change participation agreements except for to accommodate the flow downs. We don't have to change the technical infrastructure, and we can continue to operate with them just as we always have. So we're getting close to making our announcement of all of our organizations that have agreed to participate with us. And we've been very satisfied to find that almost all of them have agreed to participate with us moving forward as a QHIN. And they're all excited about being part of the QHIN. But the other constituent base that we have that we're looking at very closely and really want to encourage to participate with us is the other HIEs in the nation. These HIEs have an enormous footprint all across our country, and we want them to onboard through our QHIN to be able to be a part of the QHIN infrastructure. So we've been approaching, as a matter of fact, I've made personal phone calls to every single health information exchange in the nation, and there are still about 70 of those that are doing business and really have a significant base in their communities or in their regions or in their states. So our goal is to not only bring on all of our own existing participants, and of course to expand that and grow that, but also to bring on the HIEs so that they can actually have an onboarding ramp to the QHIN model. So we'll continue to work very closely with those HIEs, but we have regular calls, just as these guys do, with all of our participants. We have quarterly meetings where every single conversation is about TEFCA. We have communications that go out in terms of a newsletter that are about TEFCA. And then one thing that's probably a little bit unusual is that we partner with the medical societies in every state. And so one of the things that the medical societies do is that they send out communications to the doctors that are part of their medical society to really talk about what is TEFCA, why is it important for the doctors to actually participate, whether you're a one-doc shop in rural Mississippi or you're a big practice in Atlanta, Georgia. it's important to participate in a QHIN and it's important to participate in TEFCA. So we really rely a lot on the executive directors of the medical societies across the nation to get the word out to particularly those organizations that might not be, being able to benefit from some of the other communications. So education and outreach is important. We're actually talking about some common education and outreach to EPIC facilities, because we have a lot of EPIC facilities, and they're confused. They don't know exactly what's the right thing to do. So common education and outreach is something that we think is really, really important, so people have accurate and complete information.
Yeah, it's interesting. Talk about regulation. Come and visit me in New York. Anyway, okay, so first we work with our partners, which will become participants under the QHIN paradigm. And on the legal side, it varies, but they have in place a way to communicate with what will become sub-participants. So if you're talking about an EHR vendor that has, 5,000 organizations, they at least to date, there's been a very efficient and effective way to handle what will be flow downs. So, we contract, and also I would say, most of what has been said is what we're doing to a variation on that theme. So the panel's really covered it. But anyway, specifically the legal piece, there are efficient ways to do that at scale. And it'll vary between the participants, but we have to work that out. One thing we're trying to do, and we encourage it, I don't know that we'll get this with everybody, but what we want to do is get the technical side of this embedded in the version, in a certain version, and in all of those versions. So it's not that you're buying this and then having to load that up, but it's based in the product. And that's how we're doing it so far, which just means that when you onboard, it's just a matter of light configuration and registration. And for that, and I've learned this with Direct, automate, 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 automate. Whether it's going to a portal to, get onboarded, or ideally leveraging an API that builds it into the system. So you've got a system admin tool that allows you to do it. So, but what we're trying to do is make it extremely easy to turn this on. And like Matt said, they don't know whether they're connected to a QHIN or a direct network or whatever. They want this to work. And the better the software is designed to incorporate all these different networks and different push, pull, and everything to really effectively cover the waterfront on interoperability, the better the experience is.
Great, great. All right, well, we have about a little less than 7 minutes left, so I think this would be a perfect time to go to questions. I see one right there.
Good morning, Michael Marchant, UC Davis. So I have two questions. I'll ask the hard one first. Trying to determine if Matt mismatched his socks on purpose or if it was an accident.
Oh, it's all premeditated,
Okay,
Michael.
okay, good.
Yeah.
He's packed. $5. So it's a year.
Wait, that was the hard one?
Yeah.
Oh man, this is going to be good. All right.
It's a year from now, and I've selected my QHIN. I want to create a information request from another organization, and I'm connected to eHealth Exchange, Care Quality, and my QHIN. When I submit that request to this other organization that might also be connected in the same way, where does that go? And specifically, am I as a requester going to be able to differentiate, because we're going to assume that FHIR is in the future, and maybe we can go out past 12 months. If I want discrete data and not a CCD, will I be able to request that? Or is that a function of the network, or is that a to be determined? So I think it'd be interesting to understand what your perspective is on how this is all going to work with all of those channels open and the different methodologies that are going to be supported through these networks. So.
I think a core of your question, Michael, is if I'm connected to another organization through multiple pathways, which pathway will the data actually flow through? Am I sort of getting to the core correctly? That exists today. So many of you are connected with Care Quality, many of you are on eHealth Exchange, many of you are probably on vendor-specific networks. So I'm willing to bet that there is already a reality where when you want to share data with one of your neighbors, there's multiple pathways to get it. And one of the IT questions to tackle is, if I have 2 or 3 avenues by which to connect to my neighbor, which one am I going to go down? So I can tell you, at least within Epic, we've got tools built in that already handle that make sure rather than hitting the same neighbor 3, 4 times and getting 3, 4 copies of the same data, which does no one any good, pick a single pathway and share the data with them. We need to do the same with TEFCA, because you're going to see neighbors on TEFCA who are also in all those other networks. And to make that successful, one of the challenges we're going to have to solve is crosswalking the directories. There has to be a common language between the directories so that when I look up hospital down the street in TEFCA, I can realize it's the same entry there as it is in Care Equality, as it is in my vendor-specific network, et cetera. So as long as we crosswalk the directories, then it becomes a really easy thing to solve. And I think that there are ways we've done that in the past that could be brought to bear on TEFCA as well. I don't know if...
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And I suspect that all of your QHINs are going to have that same answer. The concept of one on-ramp to multiple networks or multiple highways is where this is. And I would submit that over the next, I don't know, it's going to be a year, 2 years, 3 years, those highways will coalesce to one highway. But what you care about is making sure that you can hit all the endpoints on all the different highways right now. And again, that's the way I think probably all of us are designing that. One connection, and then you're configurable to adding in whichever ones you want initially. Now, and the other comment you made about the directory is key. And so you covered that. But I would have had the same answer.
Any other questions?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Mark Smith, Altera Digital Health. We are a implementer, and we have EMRs, we have HIE. So what I'm wondering is, what are you doing with the companies that you're working with? I hear a lot about Go Live, I hear a lot about turning it on, but as we know, we discover a lot of things when it's turned on, but what are you doing before you turn it on to work with your companies that you partner with to help make sure that they have confidence so that they can get this out to their participants?
I can go again, but I want to give somebody else a shot here.
You want to take it?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. I think it's actually at the heart of why that collaboration matters. If a participant just simply gets turned on and kind of the digital equivalent of pinning a $20 bill to their collar and saying good luck, they don't get any value in their product, nor do their clinicians or their end users actually get any value of the consumption of that decision. So part of the effort that No2 takes during our partner success phase, with any effort, not just TEFCA specific, is there's a very robust program that shapes their onboard, whether that is to a TEFCA world or to the existing Care Equality world. We step them through all the way from just the common API that's used within the No2 platform, all the way through the actual workflows inside of their product. How are they going to shape the experience for the users? What decisions are being made? Do they understand the impact of that exchange? And how is it then going to be presented downstream? So part of that is baked into our process. And that partner success team is there for not only the practical workflow questions, but also from a clinical informatics perspective with our chief health officer, as well as product refinements. If during the validation or pre-prod candidate phase, we actually take a partner through and we identify some pitfalls that maybe they unintentionally fell into, then we're there to kind of get them back onto the road and say, actually our best experience and your best experience, and from experience, we can actually take you this way, just 10 degrees, and you're going to actually have a way better outcome. And it's sometimes things that they didn't even know to think about because it's a relatively new framework or a new technology, or they've never done it before. Because in many ways, it really always boils back to the people and the humans consuming the technology. And as long as that's the true north, then we find that that's how we create the success, whether TEFCA is involved or not.
Yeah, I want to jump in just 1 second, because I laid out a little bit how we work with our partners to instantiate that into the version and all of that. But I mean, you're sitting next to our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Holly Miller, and if the company wants it, we actually will work with them on, in terms of discovery and some of their software design on the usability. And we've been down this road on several things over many years. And I mean, the 360X project and stuff. So as I said, I believe strongly in the criticality of the software and the usability. So we actually do dig into that and help on that piece too, in addition to the stuff I laid out before.
Great. Well, with that, it looks like we are out of time. So I want to thank my panel members very much, and say I look forward to having these discussions next year and the year after that, and seeing how things evolve when we're on the stage again in 10 years. Thank you so much.